maps. And and then I think Butch is going to talk about some case studies of using Sanborn maps and other things to do local research. So part of this talk is going to be a live demo, which hopefully will go well. So this is where it all started. We're looking at the Waverly area down bottom right and Bainbridge in top left. And this is how the DTNI crossed this land. Instead of going up the valley up to the top there and coming down the side of River Valley, decided to go right across this twisty area. That railroad was built as a narrow gauge, and they got some really cheap land up on these hills, so that's the way they went. So it's really interesting route. And after I built my first map, this is what it looked like when I was done. Some other examples I've done. This is looking at the maps view itself, the build view. This is down where Vets Memorial was. I found that the TNOC, the Toledo and Ohio Central, later the New York Central, had their freight house down that land. And they had this really interesting spaghetti bowl of track work to get to the freight house and a few very small industries like coal dealer and lumbers and that sort of thing. That caught my attention because I thought, what a great way to use those turn-back loops that we all have on the model railroads. So this is an urban scene. So we saw a rural scene of using Google Maps. This is an urban scene. And here's a quick example of, this is Circleville, just shows some things I've mapped out there. You can see in the lower right, there is a dialog box popped up. And this is the way you can document things. So if you find out something about a specific line, you can type it in description down here like I've done. And over on the left-hand side, and I'll go over more of this later, but that shows all the lines and what those represent and some details about those. Top center is where there was a quarry up there. So the last time I updated this map was to put those tracks in. Couple more examples here. This is a map that my brother, my dad, and I put together to plan our trip out to Wyoming and Utah to follow the Big Boy when it first came in operation back in 2019. So the red line is the Union Pacific between Cheyenne and Ogden, with some of the railroad highlights called out with those various pins, but there's also pins there for hotels and that kind of thing. So you can build a map if you're going to go on a motorcycle ride or whatever, a bicycle ride. You can use Google Maps to kind of plan that ahead of time and share it. Here's an example of somebody else, not myself, who built a map to show where the Scioto Valley traction, the interurban line that ran down the Hocking Valley and the Scioto Valley to Lancaster and Chillicothe, showing where those stopped. And he did a really nice job of documenting on the left-hand side what all these things are. He's got pins placed on there to show details about things. He's got lines, he's got shapes. I'm going to show you how to do all these things in maps. And lastly, there's the more practical. I used to work for Gap, the clothing retailer, and I did a lot of work in the warehouses. And those warehouses are very, very large. The largest one, this facility, which is in Fishkill, was about 1 million square feet. And if you brought somebody new in that was going to work in that place, it helped to know how to get around within the warehouse. So this map, the gray lines are shapes I built to show the various locations within the warehouse and how to get to them relative to the front door and that kind of thing. So it's a very practical use of this. All right, so I'm going to go straight to the demo here. I'm going to show you how to access the part of Google Maps that lets you draw your maps. There are various views you can look at, some of which you've seen already, how to use line to pins, how to edit things, and how to switch maps. And then we'll go into topo maps and other resources to find the details you need. So let me see if this is going to work. There we go. Okay. So I think everybody will recognize this. Well, this can be difficult here. Where's my mouse? There we go. All right. So when I go Google Maps, I just go to maps.google.com. You guys may do it differently. It doesn't matter how you do it, but here it is. So the first thing I'll mention is that in order to build your own map, you have to have a Google account. So if you have a Gmail account already, you're good to go. If you have a YouTube account, you're good. If you have a Nest account nowadays, I think you'll probably be good. But once you have an account and you're logged in, you'll go to the menu, which is 3 horizontal bars in the top left. Drop that down, and you'll see, let's see from this angle, your places, the top one. So here we have a couple different options. One is maps. So I'm gonna click on that. And I think I have a problem with Safari. And just refresh this. Go back over here. So in this section, just go to maps. And here's where you start. These are all maps I've created. You can see there's lots of test maps, clinic map, test map, clinic map. These are my tests for this clinic. But you guys will see if you just do this for the first time, you'll want to go straight to create map. Okay, so open a new browser tab here. This is how you start. Let me zoom into Ohio, and then I'll show you some of the tools that are available. Okay. Further. And we'll start down here in the Waverly area, just since we were talking about that anyway. Okay. All right, so on the left-hand side, you saw this, some of the screenshots is a navigation bar. You can do things like, rename your map. So this is test map 3. You can put a description here about what it is. These maps can be shared. So if you're doing some historical research for the Monon, for example, you might say, this is the Monon, it has all these details, and kind of give somebody a sense of what they're going to be looking at. Over here, you also have layers. So you could have a layer for maybe right away, another layer for structures, or you might have a layer for New York Central, a layer for CNO, et cetera. And then, and you can create additional layers too. So you do that by clicking this add new layer button here. And then also down here, you have the base map. And these are various views. The ones I look at most often is this one here, which is the default Google view. There's satellite, of course, which everybody's familiar with. And then there's the terrain view, which is, again, my favorite. Along the top, once you start doing drawing, you see a couple options here. There's an undo button and a redo button. There's a search bar up here. So if you don't know exactly where Chillicothe is, you can type that in. There's a directions thing here, which I haven't used, a measuring tool, so you can measure the distance from here to there. Escape to get out of that. And then lastly, there's... Does that measuring tool, you do it on a specific route? Yeah. Just straight lines there. Yeah, that's a good question. So you can, oops, let me get back to that. You can, and you do it by moving, then clicking, then moving. Oops. This is hard to do with... yes, you can. You can do like a zigzag. I need my mouse to do it better. Okay. And let's see, measuring tool. And then you have the pins. You can drop a pin on the map and you can draw lines. And that's the main thing we'll be doing today. So I'm going to go down here and add a line or shape. And the way I do this, I'm going to show you a couple of different things in this process. Actually, let me escape out here. I'm going to switch my base map first. I'm going to go start with the traditional Google Map view. Okay, so here we are. We're trying to figure out how the DT&I cross Summit Hill. So I'm going to go up here and draw a line, click there. And the way I do this is start at one point and drag a straight line to the other point. So Bainbridge is right there. And I know the line went over here somewhere. Someone's there. And if I stop, if I let off the button and draw again to here, then I'll have 2 points and click there, keep on drawing, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to end the line, so I've got a 3-point line here and I've got a tail, I can keep on extending this if I want to. I don't want to, so I'm going to go hover over that last point, click that last point again, and that finishes the line. So I'll just leave this called line 1. And I won't put a description in here now, but you can type in your description. So in some examples, I have web links and that sort of thing about where I got the information. So you give your research some provenance. So if you need to go back to it, you can find out what that source was. You can put photos in here. And you can also do some editing things like you can change the color or the thickness of the line. So if we can make this red, for example, and we can make it thicker just by doing this. So I'm not going to make it that thick because it's going to, I'll just leave it that way. And then X out of that and X out of that. Okay, so that's how line starts. Now I know that the DT&I went through Denver, so I'm going to zoom in there. And the first thing I show you as far as, next I'm going to show you how you refine your lines once you start drawing it. And it's a little hard to see from my angle, but as you get closer in, you'll start seeing, Can you see the property lines? Denver, in the wrong place. There we go. And I can't see them, but if you're in the regular maps view and
the map over to your left.
yeah, I was looking for property lines, which I don't see here in Denver. It's just they're very light color to begin with, and that was going to be one of the examples they gave you. So when you're in Google Maps view, Google Maps, when you zoom in a certain level, you can start seeing individual plots of land, you know, where the land boundaries are, ownership boundaries are. And oftentimes in both cities and in more rural areas, you'll be able to pick out obvious right-of-way. It'll be curved and go down between people's yards and that kind of thing. So that's one of the tools I use to figure out where the line goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this. Now you'll see this line, this dot here, we're zoomed in pretty far, but if you establish two dots, they are kind of a hard, they have hard lines to them. This dot is is between two of our earlier points, and it's kind of transparent, which means that it's not a real dot yet, but you can grab these transparent dots and move them around, reshape your curve or reshape your line. So I'm gonna zoom back out. So now I'm gonna go over to this area around Summit Hill, which is in this area here. I'm gonna zoom in a bit. I'm going to change my base map to terrain view. So terrain view is really useful when you're looking for stuff that's infrastructure based, because as people, we leave our marks on the ground everywhere. And let me straighten out this line a little bit. So this line I know went up from Bainbridge, which is left end, and it came down the valley here-ish towards Storms Church. Now I'm going to zoom in and get here a bit, and we'll refine the line a bit using the topography. So let me zoom in. And once we get in a little further here, you can start seeing, here we go. You can start seeing landforms, like see Storms Church, we got a fill here. And it's a little hard to see on this screen, but you see also a curved fill here. And also down the lower right down here. So I'll use these things to further refine my lines. So we go up here and hover over this, my dots will reappear. Click on the line. Here's my dot. So I do that and move it over here. And usually I put the dots right on the apex of the curve. I'm gonna grab this transparent dot and drag it down here to Storms Church somewhere across this bridge. And I'll take this dot and move it down this way. Whoa. And there's another apex right there. So you kind of get the idea, and then you can start refining this. In places that are very curvy, I might have a dozen dots tracing a curve around to make that curve smooth. And the track went around this valley here, then went around this point and went way down to this horseshoe curve. They call this mule shoe curve. And they actually pulled 86-foot high cube cars around there in the 70s, just nuts. Okay, so let me give some other examples here. So we can refine this further and further using the topography. But sometimes topography, maybe you're in a flat piece of land where you don't really see the topography moving that much. So there you might find more use with the satellite view. So I'm gonna go to satellite view here. And satellite view is useful if you can find like a gap in the trees. I don't see it now in this view, but suffice to say, if you find a place where the railroad's been, sometimes you'll see just a small part in the trees. You can draw your line down through there. This is a little easier to see on my screen at home than it is here on this projector. All right, so that's, let me zoom out here and you see what we established so far, which is kind of jiggy-jaggy, but you can see that once you start doing this, you can start refining those lines more and more, and pretty soon you get a nice, nice, accurate shape to where the line goes. All right, so the other thing that I've used to find where lines go is, hold on, I'm going to switch to a different map real quick here first. I'll go to open a map. This is how you switch from a new map to an existing map. And I want to switch to Ohio railroads. Okay, so this orange line is the DT&I that we're just talking about. I'm going to talk about this a bit over here. These red lines are all the mining branches that came off the Hocking Valley out of Nelsonville. These no longer exist, obviously, and they were there for a relatively short time. They didn't really leave much of an impact on the ground, so you can't see them from a topo standpoint. There's no property lines out in this rural area, et cetera. So the question comes, how do you find out those details? Let's switch back here. This is on the map stuff we just looked at. I showed you how to access it, how to do lines and pins, how to build a map, how to edit, and how to switch. Next thing is topographic maps. The left side is from Google Maps and Terrain View, showing Nelsonville in lower left. The right side is a 1905 topo map, very similar to the one you had. Well, George's not here, that George had earlier. And you can see that there are branch lines that come up here into the weeds. So next thing I'll show you is how to find these old topo maps. There's two sites I use. The bottom one, University of Texas. You can go to this site and pull up the quadrangle maps for most of the state. I think he's got some, I think this library has some other states in there too. I've only paid attention to these, but something you can use anywhere is this nice USGS program that we can find topographic maps. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. When you go to that link and open this page, there's 3 different types of maps you can take a look at. The one we're interested in is the historic ones that just scrolled off. So let me go back to it and hit the download button, download now. This is not downloading anything like an application. It loads the application in your browser. This is pretty slick. Okay, so once it's loaded, anything that's shaded in orange is something that there could be topographic maps available for you. So we'll, like before, we'll zoom into Ohio. And let's do the Hocking Valley thing again. So I know I want to look in the Athens, Ohio area because Nelsonville is just up this way. So I'm just going to click here. And once you do that, it comes back and shows you all the maps that are available for that area. So everything 1905, you had 1905 updated in 1937, et cetera. So if you want to look at one, you simply click on that guy. It'll open it up, show you some details about it. This one has a pretty good scale, 1 to 62,500, so that's pretty detailed. And then you can click on this guy and a new browser window open up, and there's your topo map. And you can zoom in here, you can also download them. So this has all those coal mine spur details that I showed you in the previous or in the screenshot. This is a really, really good tool. All right. Aerial maps, you guys will dig this. So I use two places to get aerial maps. One is commercial, that's historic aerials. And what's cool about that is the maps are orthorectified, which means that you can look at these old aerial photos taken in 1948 or whatever, and then you can overlay roads and stuff like that from today. So you can figure out where things were. And you can also use another USGS product called Earth Explorer. So I'm going to show you historic aerial maps first. Okay, when this opens up, you'll want to go up to the viewer here. You can see I have an account with this. I have a free account, but you can view this stuff without an account. So you don't have to be logged in for this. You can see it's commercial and lots of advertisements around it. And once we look.
Hey, Simon, what are you up to?
Okay. So first thing you do here is you type in what you want to see.
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio, hit go. And that'll land us in downtown Columbus. So I'm going to zoom out a bit and I'm going to go over to the Yard A area, which is where today's soccer field and baseball field is. And here's cool stuff about this. So you can get topos and atlases in here too, but I'm interested in aerials. So click on that, and based on where you put your, let me put my dot here. So this will show you what years are available from an aerial standpoint. The earliest one, which appeals most to me, is 1953. So I can click on that, and now you get overlay of the actual 1953 looks. So again, you can tell it's commercial. They got the stamps all over it, the watermarks. Typically, it doesn't impact, if you just want to find out what's where, doesn't get away too much. There's some other tools, though, that are really useful in here. So I'm going to go to the compare. And I got a couple options here. One is this flashlight, which is kind of cool. You can just brush this over the old aerial and see what's there today from a map standpoint. It's pretty slick. So that's Spotlight. Then also under compare is this tool here, which is a slider. So you can slide today versus yesterday, back and forth. And the last tool in here you can compare with is the transparency. So with this, you can decide what you want to be more opaque. You want the new stuff to be more opaque or the old stuff. And so you can kind of see how things overlay. And this is a really good illustration that when you're on 670 heading out to the west side, you're actually on New York Central's right of way. Now that's exactly how New York Central left downtown. This is the old Spruce Street Yard that was Pennsylvania Railroad and Coach Yard and so forth. It's really neat stuff. And then lastly, as overlays, this can be useful. You can click on this roads and it'll show where the roads were. Let me take off the transparency. It'll be easier to see. So that shows you where the roads are now, directly overlaid on top of the old aerial. So that's historic aerials. Going back to here, the other one is Earth Explorer. So the biggest problem with historic aerials, it's great for general research, but the biggest problem with it is you got those watermarks all over it. So if you want to see something that's high resolution and with no watermarks, go back to USGS. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll go back to Ohio and zoom into Columbus and Yard A area. Looks like the Crew Stadium is just being built in this picture. Yep. Okay, a lot more options over here as far as your search criteria go. What we're going to do, though, the only thing we require is a location. So I'm going to drop a pin right here. I'm just going to click here. It drops a pin there. And oops, let me take off both of these first. This is left over from my last test. Okay, you drop a pin and it automatically puts in the latitude and longitude. So the next step is to scroll down here, find data sets. You got a lot of options here in data sets. The only one I care about is aerial imagery. I have no idea what these other things are. So you hit the plus button to open that up. And the thing I'm most interested in seeing is aerial photo single frames. So click that, it's been checked, and then you hit the results. So it's doing a database search. And it gives you what covers this space. So these are newer. You see the year up here, 1979. I want to see the older stuff because of my interest. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. And now we got one back to 1948 and 1953. And you can see the scale too. So this is 18,000. I think that's altitude, but I'm not sure. This is 67,000. So this is more, this is closer to the ground. These tools here will show where these maps cover. So the foot is a footprint, logically. You hit that, you can see that this is going to cover the space mostly to the west of my point. If I click the next one down below that, that shows the next overlay. And so now I know which map I want, I can download it. So if I were to say, like, I want to see what this guy's like, okay, that's a little closer in. And I also can click this guy, which shows the an overview of the actual map itself that space is covering. Let me uncheck these footprints. You can see this a little closer, but you can see now we actually have an image of the, I'll take that footprint off too, it'll be a little easier. There we go. So you can see the image that you're going to get. Now, if you don't have an account with Earth Explorer, this is as detailed as you can get. but accounts are free. So I recommend if this interests you, definitely set up an account. And once you set up an account, you also get access to these additional things, including download. And if I were to download this one, for example, one of these files is high resolution product. It's 84 megabytes. So it's going to give you a lot of detail. I have all these on the machine already, and they've been really, really useful and a lot of fun. All right, so that's Earth Explorer. Going back to slideshow. Pardon? No. I can send all these links out too. If that'll be useful, I might do that as well. I'll put it in the signal. Yeah.
Put it also on the web.
All right, so I showed the historic aerials demo and the Earth Explorer demo. Lastly, my last piece here is real estate maps, and these are also really cool. So based real estate maps, these were maps used for very mundane purposes, for checking out where property lines were, where the infrastructure laid, in some cases, details about the structures. Based is only in a few cities around the country, and Columbus is one of them. So you won't find them for like Circle or whatever, smaller towns. You can find them in the digital collection of the library, and also Columbus themselves have created a website around it, which is actually easier to use than the library. So I'm going to click on this now, this ArcGIS. So we get Columbus maps and apps. I'm going to scroll down to the page here till I find historic maps. Here we go. And then once historic maps, they got a bunch of them. I'm not sure what many of them are, but the based maps, which I'm curious about, there's 3 of them. There's one from 1899, one from 1910, and one from 1920. These 2 are fun to look at in comparison, especially downtown, because this 1910 is just before they raised all the grades through downtown. 1920 is just after. So you can see the things like the channel of the Scioto before they widened it, because after the flood in 1913, they did some mitigation things, made that channel much wider. So you can see that those changes that took place between those 2 periods. So anyway, I'll click on 1920. In this case, let's open a browser that overlays the map over the current map of Columbus. You see Columbus has grown a little bit. And if you pull 1899 up, it's more compact yet. So let me zoom in the same place down to the ballpark area. Whoa, there we go. Oh, it's good. That was good aim. There we go. But yeah, once you get in here, you can zoom in. You can see all kinds of interesting details. Lots of detail. Let me zoom out a bit, and you can see the different industries are up here. This is the Neil track that Jim Keen's a big fan of, and you can see the various industries up here too, and the track layout. So this is really handy, along with Sanborn maps. It's really handy if you're interested in what's going on in an urban area, especially if based is covering it. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for me. So just to recap, I showed you how to draw maps in Google Maps. If you want to do some research and put all your research in one place and have a visualization of it. Showed you how to find topo maps using the USGS product and University of Texas Library. Showed the aerial maps with historic aerials and another USGS product, and real estate maps using based maps from either the library here in Columbus or from the other Columbus website. And there is, by the way, one more I should point out, Franklin Survey Company. I don't know much about their history, but this is also a commercial site. But within here, there's another set of maps that are very similar to the base maps. And they might be more widespread, I don't know. I don't have the direct link. I'll get that to you, Don, for the article. But I have these open on my iPad. So if I have a quick question about what they have one for 1937, which is a year I model. If I have a question about the layout, then I can look at it and see exactly where the tracks went and so forth. All right, so that's it for me. Get out of here. I'm going to stop the show. I'll go ahead and open up yours, Butch. So